Welcome to TypeScript FM, the friendly podcast for TypeScript developers where we bring you news, updates, and interviews from the community with plenty of tomfoolery sprinkled in. I'm your host, Kamran Ayub, and I'm joined by my co-host and best bud, Eric Onerheim. Together, we're the two TypeScript fools. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show.
Welcome. We are back recording after dark again.
Yeah. Well, how's your night been?
It's been pretty good. I did one of those dangerous late afternoon naps that could just turn into sleeping until tomorrow. So after dinner, I went upstairs and took an hour-long nap.
Oh boy. And you woke up.
And I came back downstairs.
Nice.
And the house is all dark because Karin has all the lights off and we have the Easter lights on outside. So it looks like a spaceship is landing on our roof.
Nice.
Pretty festive.
That's cool. Speaking of the bunny day, did you do anything special? We did a Easter lunch at my aunt's place. So that was fun.
Yeah, we went to a little restaurant over here that's called, I don't know if you've been to Lynette, but it's right where the Riverview and Wine Bar used to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a little posh, but absolutely delicious. So we went there and had brunch. It was very good.
Yeah.
So what have you been up to?
Well, for me, I just shipped a new filter system for Keep Track My Games. I think I talked about it last week, but basically just as a revamp of a way to filter your lists. So you can say show me all the games that I started in 2025 or show me all the games that I finished in 2026 that were RPGs, right? So anyway, ship that. Now, you want to know something kind of fun after I finished this and was able to view my lists and then get a summary of my playtime and stuff.
Yeah,
so
let me know.
For 2025, I played 245 hours.
That seems like too little.
It actually is not. Yeah, it's not a lot, right? That's I think I counted about 6 or 7 games I finished in 2025, but some of them are 60 hours, right? That was Avowed was about 60 hours of gameplay. We also had a grandma visit.
Nice.
Over the weekend, for 4 days. So that was a lot of fun. We did mini golf. There's this place that's nearby us that has really fancy mini golf. It's called Putt Shack. It's good stuff. And then, of course, we saw the new Super Mario Galaxy movie.
I heard it was pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a fan, then I think you'll like it. The story is cookie cutter, what you'd expect for a Mario movie, right? Someone in distress needs to be saved.
It is a movie.
Yep. Exactly. But there's plenty of callbacks to retro games. They included a lot of the retro graphics, which I thought was really fun. And then there's some cameos that I will not reveal, but were definitely pretty fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So what'd you do last week?
Last week I was somewhat sick, and we recorded right as I was crescendoing into mass fever dream territory.
Oh no.
And I had a hilarious dream. I dreamt that the company I work for pivoted from software development to gold mining. And one of our executives in my dream was upset that we were not extracting enough gold from the ground. And I woke up, no joke, laughing because it was just so absurd.
That's funny.
And I thought it was really funny. And I told my boss this. I was like, I had the wildest dream.
That's funny. And your boss was like, oh, you know what? It's not gold. It's crypto, actually.
No, we're not doing crypto. Rumors of crypto are over-exaggerated.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And I'm going to be game jamming. I decided I'm going to do a game jam again.
Nice.
GameDevLibrary is doing their annual game jam.
When's that coming up?
That's next week, I think. It's April 12th through 24th, which is kind of nice because it's instead of dedicating your entire life to a game jam over a weekend, like the 72-hour ones, I'm just going to do a couple hours overnight.
Nice.
It's a free time game jam.
Cool. That's fun. All right. Should we get on to the news for March 30th, 2026?
We should.
It was the week of April Fools, and the one joke that I saw, because like you, I kind of stayed away from the internet on April Fool's Day, but I did see that TC39 had a post, and so we can call it ECMA Fool's Day.
That's right.
Do you want to read what their post said?
Yeah. And this is via Rob Palmer. TC39 bleated, "We are thrilled to announce that our ECMA standards will now use UUIDs instead of integers. So ECMA 262 is now ECMA." I'm not going to read a whole GUID. It's an ECMA GUID, far more scalable. No two specs will ever collide again. Perfect
That's
system.
right. Yep.
Shortened versions like ECMA start of GUID are also acceptable in casual conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I was joking that we're not going to read out the GUID. Hence, the reporting time will increase. Like, it'll be shorter.
Yeah. Well, they're unique
just,
anyway, so I can just say some GUID.
Exactly.
And just replace it with your favorite.
Yep, exactly.
That reminds me of hot GUIDs in your area. And it's like a Tinder for GUIDs. You're presented a GUID. I'll add this to the show notes, but you're presented a GUID and you could say if it's hot or not, which I thought was pretty funny.
It's another one like that. It was actually it's like all GUIDs or something like that.
Yeah. Yes, I recently looked at this. It's called everyuuid.com.
Yeah, every UUID. Yes.
Yeah, and it's actually a really interesting technical feat because they do enumerate every UUID, only the V4 ones, they say at the top. And it's actually an interesting technical feat to do this. And they do it with virtual scroll bar. They had to do a whole bunch of interesting tricks to enumerate like this seriously large number of IDs.
And not even just enumerate, but you can search them.
Yes.
And you can
favorite them.
It's instant too.
Yes.
So I think the person who built it also did a really long blog post on how they engineered it, and it's really interesting.
It's the same mind that brought you 1 million checkboxes, by the way.
Yep. So those are some fun links for this fun week. Cloudflare also announced something that felt like an April Fool's joke, but was not. Do you want to talk about EmDash?
That's right. So Cloudflare just announced the spiritual successor to WordPress in their post. This is a serverless TypeScript securely sandboxed environment in their dynamic worker platform for building effectively WordPress sites in TypeScript.
Okay.
And EmDash is kind of a joke because a lot of this platform was built by coding agents, and EmDash is a popular tell for prose that's written by a coding agent or an LLM. That's why it's called EmDash. But this is also no joke. This is actually a thing that they're doing, and it's entirely written in TypeScript. It can run on your own hardware or any platform you choose. Plugins are securely sandboxed in their own isolate via dynamic workers, which is pretty huge because WordPress plugins are famous for being exploited. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. This is like an interesting blog post on how they built it and what it can do. And it came out April 1st. So you would think that this is a joke, but it's not. So I guess there's a couple things. It's powered by Astro, which is not a surprise. Cloudflare has acquired Astro, so it makes sense that they would use that. Plus, Astro is really good for content websites. And then you can import posts, pages, and custom post types from WordPress. But notably, it doesn't look like they've ported any kind of plugins and stuff like that.
I think that's going to be the tricky thing.
That's the tricky thing here. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. But obviously for a first release, that probably wasn't like the goal or, part of the target. But I think I was talking to you about this, but after, this initial release, if their goal is to eventually have people migrate from WordPress to EmDash, which would be pretty cool and would make sense because it's much more secure, they would need to somehow influence the ecosystem to migrate, which would probably mean porting plugins, or can't really just do that because the plugins are owned by other developers and they maintain them. So you'd have to somehow incentivize these plugin authors to port their stuff to EmDash, which would be interesting.
Yeah, you'd either need to provide an incentive or a completely transparent interface
Yeah.
where they think they're in WordPress.
Right.
And so what comes to mind is like maybe some sort of WebAssembly or some sort of other sandbox where the native plugin code can run. I know nothing about WordPress plugins, so that might be completely infeasible because I've definitely seen like some wild stuff where they're adding tables to your database and doing all kinds of stuff.
They can pretty much do anything. Yeah.
Things like that I don't think are necessarily as like clear cut, but could be interesting.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes. And I mean, this is a really long blog post and it talks about a lot of different stuff. So can't really go through all of it, but like I'm looking at the way that you create plugins and you're writing TypeScript. Like you're importing define plugin from EmDash, like a Node.js package. And then you export your define plugin. And they have like these different hooks, which is pretty common in like when we used to use Gatsby, you'd hook into like these different lifecycle hooks to do stuff for your plugins. It was really nice sort of like system architecture that they had. And it looks like they have very much the same type of thing. Plus, your plugin can also declare capabilities. So then users or, end users will know like, okay, this plugin can read content or can send emails or do this type of thing. So it's like a built-in sort of permission system, capability system. So there's a lot that is going into this, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm excited. I think this could be huge. Now they're taking on a giant behemoth here because WordPress runs half the internet.
Yep.
Conservatively.
Yes.
And I don't think that's changing anytime soon. So this will be interesting to see where this develops.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Cool.
All right, moving on. We have an article, a security article from socket.dev. And this is an article talking about how attackers are spearphishing Node.js maintainers in really sophisticated social engineering campaigns. And they mentioned the high impact Axios compromise and how they got them. And I don't blame anyone for being got this way because they invited them to like a fake Slack and they did all of these things that made them look like a legitimate company and like investors and stuff. And they prompted with like this fake browser error, this like, here, install our desktop app to run this like VoIP call, which Zoom has trained us to do, or Citrix or whatever, virtual Blue Jeans, whatever virtual meeting software you use. There's so many of them. You're like, I don't know. I don't know them all. I run into new ones all the time. And yep, that they got them this way. Absolutely bonkers.
Yeah, it's I mean, that's what social engineering really means, right? To actually engineer something, you're going to want to target some weak point in the flow, right? That someone just sort of implicitly trusts. And one of those things is having to download software in order to like get to a meeting, right? Because people just will accept the Zoom update, or they'll go, oh yeah, whatever, got to download this thing just so I can get there because I don't want to be late, so you're taking advantage of that, like that need to be there on time, the trust of like, well, so far I haven't seen anything that has raised any red flags. Like we're talking about like a real Slack workspace that is set up with fake posts that are like, that look like there's been activity. And then when you hop on the video call, you actually see like a person. Now, we don't know yet if it's like AI generated or somehow if it's like the actual person, but I'm sure it's like AI generated. But so like all these things work together to like make you feel like this is legit, right? So I think there's a few telltales that are probably worth talking about just so people can be aware of like this type of thing. So first of all, it's usually like an unsolicited, hey, join our Slack workspace. We want to do some marketing. We think you'd be a good fit, of promoting this product or what we're working on, stuff like that. So any kind of unsolicited, like join our Slack workspace is probably a red flag. The other thing is this whole idea of even having to download software in the first place for a web-based meeting, like on modern browsers and stuff, this is not needed anymore. And so we've trained people to be like, don't click on certain types of links or don't download software as part of like just regular daily browsing. But we also need to train people like you don't need special software to meet over the web anymore. Like for Google Meet does not require any special software, and like that should be a red flag. And so one of the maintainers in this article, that's what really caught them off guard, and they were able to detect that there was an info stealer in the installer for StreamYard. So the attackers had created like a StreamYard installer file, and so it looked legit, but when they actually scanned it, there was an info stealer inside of it. And the error message, by the way, is not something that's super obvious of like, hey, download this desktop app to join this call. No, it actually loads up a web interface that looks like you're in the chat and in the call. And then it says something like, your audio is having issues. So to get a better experience, download our desktop app. And otherwise, you might lose audio quality or stuff like that. And you're like, okay, yeah, sure, whatever. Like, I want the best connection possible. So I'll install this thing. Nope.
Yeah. Well, it really goes to show that, no matter what kind of like 2FA, MFA you've got, if they are on your machine, they doesn't matter.
Right, exactly. So some people are like, well, won't two-factor authentication help? And the answer is no, because if they have access to your machine, they have access to the session token that the website gives you. And a session token is good for a certain amount of time. Could be a long time. That's how websites remember that you visited or remember that you're signed in. So, there was a case where these malicious actors followed someone after they signed into their AWS console, right? So this person had already typed in their two-factor authentication, had gotten AWS session token, and the attackers were able to piggyback off that and use that. And then they were able to make configuration changes so that they no longer had to sign in anymore, right? And then that is totally compromised. So this is really bad stuff. So I would definitely recommend reading the article. The other tip that I had was if you're someone who consistently gets asked to like do meetings and things like that, you should own that scheduling. But like me and Eric, we both use cal.com, which is free and open source. It's like a Calendly alternative. So like if you go to cal.com/Comronicus, I think is mine, you'll see like I have my meetings there, right? So I send those links to people. I don't typically use someone else's booking link. Like if people want to talk to me, I'm like, go to my booking link, we'll set it up. It runs through my Zoom and everything. So that's also one way to mitigate this is like if someone really wants to talk to you, they'll get on a call with you. Like you want some of my time, you gotta use my stuff.
Yeah. Another thing, if in general, this I've been attempted to be spearphished recently, which is wild, by the way. That's happening to me. And they do their research. But a lot of times what they do is they create a sense of false urgency. So the trick is to never be in a hurry. And if someone wants you to do something quick, be very suspicious of that.
Yeah.
Because if they can get you to move in a panic, they can get you to make a mistake.
Yes.
Or to not trust something. Like someone, I'm not going to say where or what they did, but they were trying to get me to go to this support forum because, someone said something bad about me. And I was like, no. And they're like, well, you're going to get removed from this platform if you don't. I'm like, well, I haven't seen anything official from their platform, so I'm not going to do it.
Yep. Exactly.
And it was 100% a booby-trapped PNG.
Yeah.
So, because they had screenshotted the thingy.
Yep.
So
and then the other thing is that these attackers are evolving really quickly. They weren't using Teams like 6 months ago, and now that's what they're using. They looks like they might start using Slack huddles, which is like a brand new feature and things like that. So they're like really actively doing this. So this is a pretty bad. Yeah.
The punchline here at the end of the Axios postmortem thread is Tay posts a direct warning that says, I strongly recommend that the open source maintainer community take this very seriously. The specific personas and channels used for this attack are being investigated and taken down, but there are more, so many more. Report them, talk about them, share your stories. Don't be embarrassed. Defend each other from people like who are calling other people stupid for falling for phishing, air quotes. You're not stupid. You're busy and trusting, and you're tired. Your kid was crying. You were curious, whatever. Also, this is not your typical phishing. These are, that's the end of the take quotes. This is spear phishing. Like, they are attacking high profile open source maintainers, and they're doing their research to try and spear phish you.
Yep.
So be extremely suspicious.
Yes.
Yeah, spooky stuff out there.
All right.
In other news, BabylonJS, the TypeScript game engine that specializes in 3D games, had their V9 release.
Mm-hmm.
In this release, they have a lot of new features, including clustered lighting, textured area lights. They have something called a node particle editor, which I have no idea what it is, but it sounds pretty cool for making particle effects, particle flow maps, and attractors. That sounds pretty cool. Volumetric lighting, flame graph, animation retargeting, Gaussian splat support, various different file support format supports, geospatial rendering, a new inspector, and web GPU performance optimizations.
Ooh.
So if you ever wanted to dabble with 3D games, definitely check out BabylonJS. In fact, I use their WebGL debugger plugin regularly in my own work.
That's cool.
And you don't have to be using BabylonJS to use it. I think it's called Spectre, if you're curious what the plugin is. But BabylonJS is very cool, so definitely check it out.
Nice. That's awesome. Lastly, sort of like adjacent to front-end news, but just more of like software engineering news, the Claude code, source code leaked.
Yeah, and this wasn't their model. This was the the CLI tool,
yes.
Claude code.
Yes, that's
which
right.
Which definitely has, if you've been living under a rock, it's definitely making the rounds on the tech circuit here.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are curious, certainly.
Yep. There was a few funny things. Wes Boss had like a short on like some of the stuff that they have, including like hard-coded swear words that it responds to, and that it like actually tracks like a negative like user input. So like if you swear at Claude, it's tracking that behind the scenes. I don't know what they do with it, but
I think they're using it for some kind of telemetry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, hey, we had an uptick in negative mention. Like perhaps that is signaling that something went wrong.
Yes.
With a deployment or something. I have no idea.
And so of course, basically within like 2 to 3 hours of it leaking, people had already basically ported it and rewrote it in different languages.
Yeah.
Using Claude code.
Comically, Anthropic is using DMCA, and that stands for Digital Rights Millennium
Copyright Act.
Thank you. I just remember Digital Rights Millennium, and then I'm like, whoa, my mind fuzzes out there. But they're comically using that to take down people that are hosting, copies of the leaked code, which is funny because most of that code is generated by an LLM, and the copyright authority of LLM generated code is pretty dubious at the moment, which is funny that they're trying to use DMCA to take it down and successfully doing so. But this one person used Cursor to port it to Python, and they have so far been immune to the DMCA. So we'll provide a link to it. It's called ultraworkers/claw code on GitHub if it's still up.
Yes.
But they ported it to Python. So if you're curious of an approximate representation of Claude code, check this out.
Boy. Yep. The sort of a taste of their own medicine there, huh? Cool. Let's move on to some library watches. There's definitely some cool stuff here. So maybe we just want to start really quickly with a quick one. Last episode, the library that had been making the rounds across the entire internet was Pretext, which was that pure TypeScript text measuring library by Cheng Lu. And that was some pretty amazing work being done there. Now, a library built on top of that is called LayoutSans, and it is a pure TypeScript 2D layout engine. And that includes CSS grid and Flexbox layout, meaning that you can do entire 2D layouts with the box model without any browser engine and in pure TypeScript. So think like CLI type of applications, or even like game engine UIs, like game UIs where you want to build a UI inside of Canvas or whatever. This will measure everything out for you and tell you exactly where to place it, which is pretty sweet.
Yeah. They have a pretty cool live demo of like auto scrolling text, and they're really doing some cool stuff here. And in fact, there's a lot of use cases here, I think, that might be interesting, especially if you're looking at using like TypeScript or JavaScript as like a DSL for native apps. Like there's also some interesting stuff here, I think.
Yes, for sure. Speaking of native apps, the next library is really a tool or framework. It's called PerryTS. That's PERRI. If you go to PerryTS.com, this is like a React Native .NET MAUI alternative, but it's basically compiles TypeScript to native UI on any platform. And when I say any platform, I mean like the web, the browser, different engines, mobile, Android, iOS, etc. And it's native UI. So this is really, really interesting. There is no runtime. It's just AOT, ahead of time compiled binary bytecode, basically. And so there are like restrictions with it that are worth taking a look at. Like if you need to use a third-party NPM package, you'll probably have to enable the V8 runtime. So obviously that's going to have overhead. But if you stick to anything that's built with Perry, they have native implementations of a lot of stuff you would need for native, like the file system and crypto and things like that. So you could, in theory, build an entire app with just PerryTS, and that's one of the flagship demos that they have is a GUI for MongoDB called Mango, and this is built with PerryTS, and so it works on any platform, and it's native, and so it's just a binary executable that you can just double-click and run, and it's built with TypeScript. So this is really, really cool.
Yeah, and the way that they do it, if it wasn't super clear, is that they're using TypeScript as the DSL, and they're using SWC for parsing the TypeScript code and presumably generating an AST, and then taking that and using CraneLift to generate like native code. There's no JavaScript running unless you enable the optional V8 runtime.
Right. Yes. And so I don't know too much about CraneLift, but that seems to be the magic that takes that syntax tree and puts it into native code.
Yeah, pretty wild stuff.
Yeah.
I am excited. I'm totally going to check this out.
Yeah, I mean, this is really cool. If you think about this is like a UI framework, right? So they have components and things like that. So if you can build a MongoDB GUI app, like you could use this instead of Electron, right? If you want to build like a native app. This almost reminds me of like Windows Forms, like you can build a .NET Windows Forms app that outputs like an exe file or WPF or whatever. But even that has overhead because it has to load up the .NET runtime. But in theory, if you stick to just PerryTS, you would not have any sort of runtime overhead.
And what's interesting here is it's similar to React Native, right? But it's different in that React Native it's a runtime that is just enough of a bytecode interpreter to run the React flavor that React Native is. So, certainly there's still some overhead there because it's running a custom bytecode interpreter versus like Perry, which is ahead of time compiling to like native binary.
Yeah. Cool. Well, yeah, we'll have to track it and see what comes of it because this is a pretty early release. But it's pretty cool that they already have a production app up and running.
Another cool one from Blue Sky user David Sherritt is a library called Gagen, which is a way of generating, speaking of DSLs, generating GitHub Action YAML files using TypeScript, which I'm all about.
Yeah.
Like, I personally am not a fan of YAML.
No.
Ever.
Is anybody?
If I never had to write YAML ever again, it would be too soon. So this is super cool. Go check it out. GitHub.com, DSHERRET/GAGEN. And it's very new, so buyer beware. But this looks stupendous.
I mean, I like that you don't have to use like a third-party host or anything. It's not like a full CI pipeline thing. It literally will just take your TypeScript and put it into a YAML file, like compile it to a YAML file, transpile it.
I think the thing that's really huge is YAML is kind of like a magical incantation. And I don't know if it's right or wrong. You need to know the right words, and you can typo something super easily in YAML.
Mm-hmm.
The nice thing about it being in TypeScript is I know if I'm right about what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
So this I could see being extremely useful because I have definitely messed up YAML a lot.
Especially when it comes to commands.
Yeah, or multi-line commands or any kind of if you need to do something multi-line in YAML, God help you.
Yes, exactly. Yep, that's been my experience. Or even like variable substitution and like knowing where variables are. There are YAML schemas, so if you are using an editor that might support one of the GitHub action schemas, like you do get a little bit of editor help there, but it's not to the same level as like what you might get in TypeScript.
Next up, we have finprim, and this is a new library for financial primitives. So if you are ever working with money or working with like payments and stuff like this, you might have rewritten like some sort of local financial primitives. finprim is a zero dependency TypeScript library that handles financial primitives that every finance app might need. So like VAT numbers, routing number verification, loan EMI calculations, which might be super useful for me, multi-locale currency formatting and parsing, super useful, BIC, Swift validation, IBAN validation, all kinds of random money things that you might need to know. Like, hey, I need to see if this credit card number is real. Like, is this a valid credit card number, and what network is it? And they have examples like that.
That's
cool. So this looks pretty cool. Now, buyer beware. This is a brand new library from someone I'm not familiar with. So, and it's dealing with finances. So I would definitely take, very close look at it before you throw it into your project.
Yes.
But it definitely seems pretty cool. And for a library like this, where I can imagine like security being like a huge, huge deal, I would probably vendor this library and not install it from NPM.
Mm-hmm.
I would probably vendor it and then like very carefully analyze the source code to make sure it's not doing anything weird. I'm sure the author is great, but again, like the blast radius for financial stuff is super high.
Yes. Yep. Cool.
And another library watch is from our own Justin Young, who's made a GameDevLibrary, which is a huge collection of cool little demos and snippets for building your own games. So check it out. He's got literally a ton of stuff. So he's got a SoundForge little app, a Sprite font forge, a wave function collapse authoring tool. So this is like for doing like auto generation of levels and stuff. He's got an animation builder, a behavior tree builder, a tile set combiner. He's working on a UI framework. He's got a typewriter, like little demo in there, a mini map he's been working on recently. He's got a ton of stuff in here. So if you are doing like any kind of game and you're doing it in TypeScript and you're interested in Excalibur, he has done a ton of stuff. A ton of stuff in here. It's just a huge library, literally a library of every kind of game dev technique that you might want.
I'm beginning to think that Justin is an AI. He is a machine.
He is a machine. But he's got actual intelligence.
Yes. Yep. He went to town on our docs, which is fantastic, writing lots of detailed guides and things like that. And then somehow he finds the time to build all these little tools.
Yeah.
Super cool.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. One of the things that I really love recently is they went into inverse and forward kinematics. And this is like how you simulate like robot arms and stuff or spider legs or whatever. Very fun little demo for doing, fun things in games.
Sweet. All right. Time to move on to some community highlights. There was a blog post recently by Vercel on how they made Turborepo something like, 96% faster? And they go through several iterations of like in different versions. Here's how long it took. But we're talking like it can do a 1,000 package monorepo. In version 2.8, it would take 8.1 seconds. And in version 2.9, it was 0.716 seconds. So this is like, it's like a unreal amount of like optimization. And so they go into basically like an engineering post about like, okay, what's the bottleneck? How did we identify it, and how did we engineer it so that it was much, much better? So they go into all the different PRs that went into it, all that kind of stuff. So it was super interesting.
And one of the interesting things that you can do, which I didn't know you could do, is you can do turbo run build -- profile, and then you can get a Perfetto trace, so you can like for yourself see what's taking the time. So if you're like, hey, I need to debug my build, like this might be a thing you could check out.
Yes.
No, it's pretty cool. And one other interesting thing is that they used LLMs to do this whole like help with this whole loop, identifying, bottlenecks and iterating. Very interesting stuff.
Yeah, and it is also, I think, good that they mention some of the places where the agents fell short. And basically, they were like, we needed stronger testing and a better verification loop. I had to be more involved, like as a human, because the agent would like get super fixated on the first idea that it came up with and force it to work rather than backing up and thinking abstractly about the problem, because LLMs don't have critical thinking. They don't have critical thinking skills, so that's not surprising. The agent would chase the biggest number it could get, creating micro benchmarks that were relatively meaningless. The agent never realized it could benchmark the improvements on the Turborepo codebase itself. Now, see, that one could definitely be made into a skill, right? Like you can have the agent follow instructions for like, to test this, you can dog food the repo using Turborepo itself. But some of this is definitely like, okay, this is where humans need to be involved, like to do actual engineering. And so they talk about how they did some real engineering work to get across like the 85% line and stuff like that. So it's pretty interesting. And then how they were still able to use agents in a specific way to like do some of the tedium of like repeated benchmarks and workflows and stuff using sandboxes and things like that. So yeah, it's also a pretty interesting case study in how to use agents to make your life a bit easier.
And if you want this Turborepo speed, this is in version 2.9.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
And next up, Alexander Lichter posts a oxlint and oxfmt support matrix. So you can now see in the oxc docs which frameworks and file types have compatibility with oxlint and oxformat.
Cool.
So this also applies to the v+ lint and v+ format commands. So check it out.
Yeah, this is super cool. And also just kind of a really nice list of like, here's all the different frameworks.
Awesome. Next up, Jake Archibald has a really fun little demo of the proposed HTML in Canvas feature. But remember, you can already kind of do this where you can put a canvas behind or on top of HTML elements. You can also do like spooky things by embedding HTML in SVG and then drawing the SVG to a canvas and then doing some wild stuff. There are some hacks right now, but the benefits of this new proposed feature are like readbacks. So you can like send like things to a video encoder and do cool stuff. You could, show HTML in non-flat shapes. So you could like wrap HTML around a sphere or 3D geometry or something weird like that. You could use shaders on your HTML, which, I'm a big fan of. You could do some really wild stuff. So definitely check out their example. They have a little like TV screen demo where they have like this HTML page warped around a sphere and has like a TV effect on it. So it's pretty neat.
That is pretty neat.
Next up, Boston TS Club is back. So if you're in the Boston area, the Boston TS Club meets again. They've got new venues, new speakers, and the strongest types yet. So their first meetup in 2026 is at Link Squares, April 16th at 5:30 p.m.
We'll link to the Eventbrite, and you can click the link to go RSVP if you're in the Boston area. Next up, we have a 6-hour talk by the creator of Solid, Ryan Carniato. This is his like Let's Talk series that he does, and it's basically like a stream of consciousness. And there's, I think, multiple guests and things like that, but it's basically 6 hours of Solid 2.0. So like what's coming next in Solid.js. So this is pretty interesting.
Yeah, definitely check it out. And I've heard from others that they love listening to just Ryan talk. Because he's super passionate about Solid and super knowledgeable. So I've heard it's a lot of fun just to listen to him talk and put it on as like I think what we call like third screen content.
Yes.
Where I'm working and I have a third screen over here just going.
That's right. Yep. So I think one of the quote Bleets for this one was make a fire, make a cup of tea, and curl up and listen to this.
Yeah.
Sounds fun. Next up, this is kind of a library watch, but not really. It was actually more interesting engineering blog post. You probably are familiar with VIN numbers, right? Well, a VIN number is a serial number, and there are different parts of that serial number that correspond to like different attributes of the car, the make, model, the year, and also includes different features and stuff like that, which is kind of wild if you think about it. Like all that is encoded in a single number.
Yeah. This is the Corgi VIN decoder.
Yep.
Written in TypeScript. Fast offline VIN decoding for Node.js browsers and Cloudflare workers.
Yeah.
Pretty freaking sweet.
Yeah. So I think that if don't quote me because I'm just going from when I read the blog post a couple days ago, I believe that they had shipped like an 8 megabyte SQLite file, like because it's an embedded database, right? So they had to ship all these VIN attributes down to you with the package, but now they don't need to do that. They can still ship a much smaller SQLite database because now they no longer have to do a database query to get a majority of that first class attribute data.
This is so cool.
Yeah. And then as I was mentioning earlier, we talked about Pretext in the last episode, but I think when we had talked about Pretext, I didn't realize like how of much of an impact this would have. But the more that I read about Pretext and what it enables us to do, like the more my mind was being blown. And I wanted to direct you to Fireship because they have a really funny video and informative video on what Chenglu was able to do with Pretext and kind of what it actually means, because it's such like an abstract thing. Like how could measuring text be so impactful? But it enables you to do really crazy stuff, like really create like dynamic interfaces and things like that, which with much faster performance than before. So things like virtualized list or anything that needs to like know the height of something ahead of time in order to optimize it can be done in pure TypeScript now with Pretext, right? So all sorts of hacks before where you had to delegate to the browser or the operating system or whatever. A lot of that was simplified with Pretext, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. And if you've ever had to dabble in text measurement, it's insanity. It'll warp your brain.
Usually I just end up with a guess or like something that's approximate and sometimes just doesn't work in certain edge cases, but is like okay and works in like 80% of cases.
Yeah, I think the tough thing is if you're working with anything that's not monospaced font, the different glyphs, depending on what is around them, will be spaced differently. It's like non-uniform. So like if an F comes after an A or if F comes after an F, the advance to the next glyph is different, makes it difficult. So that's the cool thing about this is it pre-computes, given a list of words, it pre-computes a lot of the hard part and then allows you to do this like dynamic layout in really fast and cool ways.
Yes. If you can imagine like sort of the revolution when we had the ability to do media queries to like figure out the viewport width and stuff like that. Like there's a lot of use cases that this enables now, which were really hard to do before.
All right. I've got 2 Bleets of the week. The first one I thought was really funny from Blue Sky user johnchurch.com. And it's in reference to the Socket Dev article that we just talked about, how the social engineering attacks against high-profile maintainers. He says, "Joke's on them. Ignoring my inbox has been a part of my security posture." So I thought that was pretty funny because my poor inbox is completely. My second bleed of the week is from Blue Sky user Savannah.dev, and I love this. I just woke up from a plague-induced nap where I dreamt my 2-year-old nephew asked me what TypeScript types would be to represent his toy barbecue and all the accompanying plastic meats. And that really does remind me of the dream I had about pivoting to gold mining.
Yeah.
I think we might have had a similar plague.
Yes. That's pretty funny. So I recently came across a secret of the handbook this week from Stefan Judas, who is the Web Weekly newsletter creator. And it's about using TypeScript assertion functions, which are a little bit different than TypeScript guard functions, where you say like is user, and then you say like value is user. And then within that conditional statement, the type is narrowed to whatever the acceptable type is that is guarded, right? But an assertion function is like super good for tests and stuff like that, where you need to assert that something is something, and then without doing a conditional, it just narrows the type right after the statement, which is excellent. Like that's what I want a lot of the time. And so this is using the asserts keyword, which again is something that I didn't even realize is in TypeScript. So an assert function signature just looks like a regular function signature, but the return type is asserts value is whatever your type is. So like assert is user, value is unknown, asserts value is user. And so you can say like throw a new error inside that function because that's an assertion function, you're throwing an error, right? So again, I think this is excellent for tests, because how many times have you written a test where you're like, I already asserted it's not null, but TypeScript doesn't know that. So then you have to add a conditional afterwards, right?
Or throw a lot of exclamation points in there.
Yes, exactly.
I want to yell at TypeScript.
Yep.
I can also see this being useful for flows where you're like, if this is not the type I think it is, we're done.
Yep.
Like we need to blow up.
Exactly.
Like,
or API contracts, like runtime type checking, to put inside of your API, methods to say, hey, this parameter needs to be a string. Assert is string, right? I'm sure there's a library now where you can like import a whole bunch of these assertion clauses, which would be pretty cool. All right. Got some cool links?
I got some cool links. Did you know? I haven't talked about NeoVim in so long.
I know.
It's like I'm not even a NeoVim user.
It's usually a running joke here.
Yeah, that's how you know someone uses NeoVim, they'll tell you. But NeoVim 0.12 just dropped with a bunch of cool stuff, a built-in plugin manager. So if you're not familiar, they had, for the longest time, you were using like, third-party plugin managers. So, and there were two very popular ones, and I cannot remember them off the top of my dome. But now they have vim.pack. So you can do a very simple like vim.pack.add and give it like a Lua table that is either like just a bare string of your GitHub plugin or a Lua table with a little more stuff in it for like configuring those things or whatever. Pretty slick. They also added a new diff tool into NeoVim that lets you compare directories and files directly, which is pretty slick.
Nice.
And you can also use that and configure that as your Git diff tool. So you get a nice like split screen diff inside of NeoVim, which is chef's kiss. So good.
Sweet.
Another cool link I've got is if you're not under a rock, Artemis 2 is a moon mission that's flying around the moon right now with astronauts. Oh, by the way, they just broke the record for the furthest humans have ever been from Earth.
Nice.
Ever.
That's awesome.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
Like, just to think about that, like that is the furthest that humans have ever been away from Earth. Mind blown. Anyway,
that's cool.
There's a great YouTube video from a YouTuber called Dr. Nora, and she goes through how to download and visualize like NASA's data in Python and graph it.
Nice.
And I was blown away at how quick you could just draw a 3D plot of Artemis around the moon.
That's cool.
And I was so blown away. And I was like, okay, I need to be doing more like Python plotting. But I had never done anything like this. So I thought it was pretty neat that this data is just available and that you could graph it with Python. And it just kind of blew my mind.
That's cool.
And the last one is a video about how floating point math is hard and weird and stupid and insane, and how if you add numbers in a different order in floating point math, you might get a different result. So if that intrigues you at all, definitely watch this video. It's a really great explanation of how it's a 40-minute explanation of floating point math, which I also enjoyed.
And the depressing part is when you realize that JavaScript is all floating point math.
That's right. And this is also why when you're doing, speaking of financial transactions, this is why you don't use floating point numbers to represent
Money.
currencies.
Yep.
You use integers.
Yes.
So like, for example, you don't record cents in like you don't like record 1 cent as like 0.01 of a dollar.
Mhm.
You record it as 1.
Yep.
The single atomic amount of currency you record as an integer.
Yes. Yep.
Because of floating point nonsense.
That's right.
Yeah, there's a lot of like finance tricks in here, like that that might either terrify you or make you happy, or maybe you're plotting your own office space. But anyway, I really enjoyed this video.
That's cool. Speaking of space travel and stuff like that, I have been listening to the audiobook for Project Hail Mary. So if you went to go see the movie, I don't know, I haven't seen the movie yet, but I'm reading the book first. And funny story about this is that I totally forgot to mention that last week my wife and I did a spa treatment. So we went to a local spa. They have like a bathhouse and stuff, which is really cool. So got to just sort of relax for like 2.5 hours without kids, and you're supposed to be like totally silent during the whole thing. So it was great. It was like very meditative. So just sit in a pool or the steam sauna or the dry sauna. And then they had like a relaxation room, and somebody had brought Hail Mary, Project Hail Mary, the book. And so I just started reading it, and I got to chapter 2 and I was like, I like this. And so I got the audiobook and then continued listening to it after that. So if you like space stuff, and if you like The Martian, it's the same author. If you liked The Martian, both the movie and the book, you'll probably like Project Hail Mary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm told that Hail Mary is very different from The Martian.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, like plot-wise, like
yes.
it's a very different thing. But, you know, they both happen in space.
Yes, exactly. Yep. It's pretty fun stuff. And, you know, Eric, because you're a physics nerd, you'll probably like it. So I'm just saying, I recommend it.
I really enjoyed The Martian. So I know a lot of spoilers about Project Hail Mary.
Cool.
But
I don't, so don't tell me.
I won't say anything.
I knew zero going into it, so this is all like new to me. So
yeah,
I'm enjoying it.
It's good. You know it's good when my wife goes to see it and comes home and she's like, "That's the best movie."
Wow,
I've seen
cool.
ever.
That's cool.
It was like extremely profound. She said, like, she was like, I was really thinking about our place in the universe, and I was like, damn, this is a good movie then.
Yeah, well, I'll probably have to check out the movie when it's on streaming platforms, or if I get lucky, maybe we can go to the theater. All right. Well, it's that time. The time for the long goodbye. But you know what? We're probably going to have to make it a short goodbye because this has already gone on long enough.
I think my theme here is don't trust anything you read on the internet or from an LLM. And I say that because of April Fools. And I say that because of the spearphishing.
Yes.
And I say that because of a lot of the blog posts where we're just seeing that you really need to be in the loop for any kind of agents. A lot of times they'll get stuck in a local maxima.
Yes.
And you really need to minima.
Yeah.
And you really need to kick them out of that.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned that I shipped this feature and that probably 80% of it was built with it wasn't Claude code. It was, Copilot, but using Claude Sonnet as the model. But it still took me another 3-4 days, actually like pretty much the full week, just working off and on it to polish it up. Because like I said before, like you don't want to skip that refactoring step. Like I did not want to just ship what it had. So like I reviewed all 160 files or whatever they were part of the pull request, but not all of them were touched or were part of the change. Like some of it was generated files. So like could skip those easily. But then other parts of it I noticed where it fell short a little bit, where like it duplicated a lot of logic for messing with facets on the front end, like the filters. And so I asked it to refactor that to make that into utility function. So that collapsed like 300 lines of code down to like just a few. And it missed a few things, because it's not perfect when it goes through and changes a whole bunch of files. They can still be a little inconsistent or to like miss things. So it's still really critical to like review it. Plus, I felt that, and I talked a little bit about this in the video we haven't published yet, of like where agents and humans sort of where they have their Goldilocks zone of like where they're better used at. But for humans, if you want to learn something, don't have the agent do it, right? So when I did the refactoring, I did the majority of the refactoring because I wanted to learn what it did, right? So it got me more familiar with what it did so that I could understand it better. And then I could be like, oh, well, I realized that, this code could be separated out into a separate project, doesn't have any dependencies on any code in this project. So, might as well just move it out. And like here, I should redo the namespaces here because it doesn't really make sense. I put things into 2 different folders and I didn't really like that. So, changed how that worked and, just did a bunch of things that I would do, if I was writing the code, because now after it took care of some of the tedium, which was like the parser for the language or whatever, the quote unquote language, that was something I did not want to write. And it did a great job at that. Like I didn't really touch that code very much, but it was sort of the more integration code that I changed and just made better and more flexible. And like, for example, for each facet, there's a name for it, right? Like genres, release date, platform, developers, publishers, those are all strings, right? So they need to have an ID in order to identify like which filter are you messing with. And before they were all just magic strings. And in the front end, I would have code that would be like, if the filter is, status, and that was just a string. And I was like, what would be great? What if I could sync my C# code to my TypeScript code?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I took about a day I spent and I wrote a source generator for it, like a T4 template. And so now anytime I save my C# code, it automatically updates my TypeScript code, and my TypeScript code has exhaustiveness checking so that if I add a new facet, I get a compile error that my front end is not handling it yet.
Yes.
So,
source generators for the win.
Yes.
I love source generators.
So that's the benefit of end-to-end typing, right?
Mm-hmm.
The things that you do on your back end are immediately reflected on the front end. And so that's not something I had the agent do. And I didn't specify that as when I, when I prompted it initially to do all this work. That was something that I realized I really wanted to do before I shipped it, right? That's that's what engineering is. So that's why I still think there's such a critical need for humans in the loop for any kind of AI assisted coding. Like, yes, it probably saved me a few days, definitely. Like I would have had to struggle bus through doing the filter grammar and stuff like that. So it definitely saved me, probably a week worth of like evenings, working in the evening type of deal. So
yeah. And I'll just, again, I'll underscore how like I think that step was of like refactoring and like very critically looking at it, because LLMs aren't very good at removing or architecting. Like they're good at generating code.
Yeah.
They're not really good at the thinking part. That's what the human's for.
Nope, exactly. That's a good place to leave it.
Yeah, I think so.
Perfect. All right. Well, y'all have a good night. We'll see you next time.
We'll see you next time.
Hi, everyone. This is Kamran. I just wanted to thank you for listening to the show, and we hope you enjoyed the episode. If you want to see the show notes, you can check your podcast player or go to TypeScript.fm, where you'll see a list of all the episodes. If you enjoyed the show, tell your friends, and please rate it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, because that's how the show grows and gets discovered by more people. If you want to suggest news or a project that should be covered, or just want to say hi, email us at feedback@typescript.fm. If you want to follow us on social, we're both active on Blue Sky. I'm at Kamronigus.com, and Eric is at ericonerheim.com. You can also follow the show directly at typescript.fm.